We acknowledge the traditional owners of this land throughout Australia and recognize their continuing connection to land, waters, and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Now, with me today are these amazing women. Next to me is Michelle Perugini, who is the CEO and co-founder of Presagen. Give her a round. And then we've got Tammy Barton, who is the founder of the amazing MyBudget, which she founded over 10 years ago. Give her a round. And then we've got Kelly Jamieson at the end, who is the managing director and founder of Edible Blooms, which if you drive down Anzac Highway, you'll see this large, beautiful pink new building. That's her, so give her a round. Yeah, thanks. So today we're going to talk about the intersection of technology and service. And I'm going to start by allowing each of the women, we'll start with Kelly, talk about...
That's the argument. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, she told me to start with you, so just about your career history and more about the business that you have currently. That way we have a bit of a foundation for the services. So if you want to start.
Hi everybody. This is an amazing turnout. It's bigger than the last one that I was speaking at. So I think that the crowd of speakers attracts a good number. So thank you for coming. So my name is Kelly Jamieson. I founded a business called Edible Blooms 15 and a bit years ago now. Time flies. And we're essentially like a florist online, but we make bouquets that you get to eat. So that's our signature product. And I started the business when I was living in Brisbane, and within the first year we expanded to distribution outlets around Australia, but we've been primarily an e-commerce distribution channel from the first day that we operated. So that makes us one of the older e-commerce businesses in Australia. And we've since expanded, so we have offices in every capital city of Australia. We're in New Zealand and also in the UK now. And we just get to deliver happiness every day. So I love getting out of bed to do what I do every day. I feel very privileged to do that. And I think one of the joys I've had in the last 15 years of my journey has been building an amazing team that come along with that on that ride with me. So that's a little bit about Edible Blooms. I encourage you to check out the website, but I'll pass over to my next speaker, Tammy. Is that right?
Thank you, Kelly. I love that. Deliver happiness every day. That's amazing. So Tammy Barton, founder and director of MyBudget. I started MyBudget 21 years ago now, when I was like 10. From my kitchen table, and I started the business because I really wanted to help people eliminate financial stress out of their life, but more importantly improve their financial health. And what we do is we put budgets together for people, and we manage people's budgets and payments and keep them on track to achieving their financial goals. But that's what we do, and what the client gets from that is a life that they get to live without having to worry about money. We get to change people's lives every single day, because if you think about everything that all of us does every day, it all intersects with money. And money has such a profound impact on our life and the way in which our lives turn out. So we can do the best that we can with what we've got. You've got a good chance of your life turning out the way that you want it to. So that's what I get to do every day. I don't get to deliver happiness, but I get to change
in a very different way.
In a very different way, but I get to change people's lives. And again, just as Kel said, I feel very privileged that I've found my calling. I've found what I love to do every single day, and I don't feel like I go to work. When I go to work every day, it's just a joy. And my clients, our clients, I should say, are my everything. That's what I've got a couple of team members with me tonight that are here supporting me, so thank you. That's what we do. They're at the foremost of every single decision we make in the business, and it's all about those guys and our clients.
Awesome.
And now I'll pass you over to the absolutely incredible. I mean, when I met Michelle, I felt privileged to meet her, as I did with Kel as well. So yeah, I'm privileged to be sitting up here with these guys, who I also call friends as well.
We're very lucky. I am going to steal your slogan though, because I really like that one. And we also deliver happiness every day in the form of little bundles of baby joy. So my name's Michelle Perugini, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Presagen. We're an AI healthcare company, global healthcare company. We basically have kind of two sides to our business. One is a really advanced AI platform that we build medical AI products for, and then we have our first commercial product, which is a really interesting one in the fertility sector, called Life Whisperer, and that's using artificial intelligence to take images, analyse images of embryos during the IVF process and help the doctors to pick the ones that are most likely to lead to a pregnancy for patients undergoing IVF. And that particular product is now approved in many regulated markets. We're approved to sell in 60% of the world. We've got initial kind of commercial use in Australia and India and Europe now, which is really exciting. So we're kind of on that global expansion.
Yeah, it's super
Who was
exciting.
that? Thank you. Of course. That's my fan club back there. Just a fan club of one. But it's really exciting. It's been a lot of hard work, and we've got a long way to go. But I echo the sentiments of these guys. When you're doing something you love, it's just really, it's amazing to be able to bring something to the world that you're very passionate about and that you've built yourself and with an amazing team. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, thanks for coming along.
Yeah,
That's
great.
it. Let's go. We're done.
So each of you are in different industries. I mean, we've got AI, we've got finance, and then we've got, well, I don't want to call it hospitality, but a more traditional industry that's really evolved and become much more of an innovative delivery that you're doing with floral and baking, or floral and food, the combination, which is just so gorgeous. And I'm interested to learn, I'm sure everyone else here is how technology has evolved in your industry, and specifically how you're using it within your product offering, both from your, I guess I would call it your innovative forms of technology, and also your overhead, the products like your cloud-based systems that you have in-house that just keep things rolling. What would you guys care to share about that? Maybe we'll start with Tammy.
So technology at MyBudget, when I first started, was more about helping me and my very small team of my sister and a trainee that I had be more efficient. So it was all about, I can't continue to grow the business and do everything that I'm doing manually. So how do I become more efficient in doing that? And I looked at what software I could buy off the shelf, and there wasn't any software that I could buy that I could fit that fit for my business. So I decided, well, how hard could it be? I'll just build something.
It's my favourite saying, it's hilarious.
By the way, it's turned out to be quite hard. So what we've done over the journey, over the 20 years, is actually leveraged technology where it's not core to our product offering, to what makes us different in the market, which might be things like phone systems or CRMs and that sort of thing, where we can just take it off the shelf and plug it in and use it. And what we've developed is what is our competitive advantage, so to speak. It's what is bespoke to MyBudget. And we're now in the process of actually rethinking all of that and rethinking the way in which our clients relate to their money and the whole world relates to their money, and rethinking how technology can play a part in that, because our technology has got us from where we were 20 years ago to where we are today, but it's not going to take us to where we need to be in the next 20 years because things have changed so much. So instead of renovating the house, we stopped renovating the house, and we decided we're just not going to spend any more money on renovations, and we're actually going to buy a new block and build from scratch, and that's what we're doing. And I often describe the way that we built the technology the first time around is like when you build a house, and then you realise, oh God, I've had another kid by accident, and that happens to me, by the way. And then, so I need to put a family room on and another bedroom, so I've got to run the plumbing across the back of the house, and so it's just piecemealed together. And so now we just really want to build that new, state-of-the-art technology, that next generation that's going to not only take us for the next 20 years, but well and truly into the future, help us become a truly a global company, but importantly, help our staff deliver an even better service to our clients. We can take all the heavy lifting that they're doing that doesn't add any value to the client and allow all the time that they're wasting on that, actually building relationships, real relationships with the clients and understanding what they want out of life and making sure what they're doing with their budget is actually delivering that. That's even more value, and that's something that, it's going to be hugely crucial moving forward. So that's sort of our relationship with technology to this point.
So because you started this in the 90s?
Yes.
So
There was no, we make payments of people. I know. And we were wearing happy pants.
like 20 years? No, I mean, you made startups cool, really, Tammy. But
I didn't even describe how, non-technical we were. I adapted Quicken, and I would literally go to the post office to pay people's bills. There was no electronic banking, nothing.
It's crazy.
I would line up at the banks and... Honestly, I swear the girl at Australia Post used to put up her on break sign when she see me come in. She's like, I swear I'd just see her duck off behind where I couldn't see her, and I'm like, oh.
So what technology did you leverage then? I mean, the internet was booming. Did you have a website?
We had a website, I think I paid someone around $4,000, and they even designed my logo and everything.
Yep.
So I had a website. I used to do appointments over the phone for anyone that inquired that was not in South Australia, and I used to post them their documents to sign, to join up. But I used Quicken. So anyone familiar with QuickBooks, Quicken? So the Quicken 1994, some version, and it quite frankly could have been some copied version as well. I don't know.
I mean, founders have to keep your budget low.
I don't know. I adapted that and just ran everything through that. And obviously we had a very cheap phone system, and that's how the business started. But it was very much word of mouth, and that's how the business grew, just through accountants and finance brokers and financial planners referring their clients to MyBudget.
So at what point did you introduce bespoke technology that you were
So
building?
shortly thereafter, within 18 months, I knew I needed to build something because I was getting all these referrals.
Yep.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to keep running the business efficiently if I didn't do something to sort out. I mean, I had diary cards and all sorts, and electronic banking came into play, so that meant I could get my system to talk to the bank system in some way. There must be a way, you know.
Yeah.
So it was not long after that. So it was early 2000s where I started to build something.
Yeah.
And we've continued to develop on that software stack for a long time, sort of 18 years, but we stopped developing on that a few years ago, and we've just been keeping the lights on that while we build the new software stack.
And alternatively, I know, Kelly, you and I were talking the other day about how you were off the shelf right away in terms of, but you made it a cloud-based system to the get-go.
Yeah.
Can you expand a little bit about that?
So similar to Tammy, you sort of cobbled together things at the beginning, and my first website was a platform called Xcart, if anyone's heard of that. It's based in Russia, and my developer was called Sergei Smirnov, and I absolutely kid you not, that was his last name, so that's why I remember it so well. I loved that. So it was really interesting. So in those early days, I used to have to talk to him in our night time because that was their daytime, and that was quite common for Australian e-commerce startups, in that you would have to find developers that were in other countries. And then I discovered a great cloud system called NetSuite, which was an ERP system that had come out of America, and we were one of their first clients in Australia. And total naivety, but I jumped on board with that because they said it would solve all my problems. And
Marketing 101.
And it wasn't too bad. It was great for our back-end systems, but what you learn with off-the-shelf systems is it's very hard to find a solution that does everything. There's always a compromise of what you're doing. And the compromise we found as we went down that path was actually our customer front-end experience, and that's the most important thing you could do. And at that point, I moved to South American developers. So I was up, I had young children at the time, and I was up between midnight and 4 a.m. with the developers if I needed anything done. And even just to add a mobile version of our website in 2009 was like $10,000, and now that's sort of included when you sign up to any website. So there's just lots of I've got loads of war stories as we've gone through our tech journey, but what we really learned from that first ERP experience was it's actually about the customer, because as soon as I found an Australian web platform, which we still use today, I happened to be at an online retail conference and I met the guy that started it, and I just kept asking him questions and he kept saying yes to all my answers. And I thought, well, I've done this before, okay, let's try it again. And he was awesome, and he built us a new website and it plugged in with accounting software. So then it was that sort of more modern tech stack where you can match different pieces and they all sort of APIs all talk to each other. And when we started using him, he had a staff of 7, and they now have 120 staff, and they're really big. So I backed a winner then, so that was really great. And so sometimes you sort of follow your instincts, and I think that's one of the things that I've learnt in the 15 years I've been in business, is it's actually about sometimes you have this gut instinct, I think this is the right thing to do. Plenty of times that's been the wrong thing to do too, but more times than not, you have to just trust that you've met some good people. And the fact that I could find web developers in Australia was just, after having Russians and South Americans, I was like, this is amazing. So, and they were in our time zone and it ticked all those boxes. So that's been a really great journey for us. And so we still use that off-the-shelf product, but what we've seen evolve in that space over more recent years is they allow a lot more plugins. There's a lot more flexibility with what you can do. So I think no matter what you do, and even if you do a fully bespoke service, you've always got compromises. Like there's no perfect solution, and I think that's been my learning with using technology to improve the customer experience, is that you have to do what's right for the customer, and then if you have to band-aid things in the back end for your own systems, that's the right way to go. So that's a really shortcut version of what we've done with our tech.
Interesting. Do you ever think about, as you grow, about making something bespoke and custom to what your needs are?
I'd love to. I think the talent pool of developers, and Tammy, I know, can comment on this, in Australia is really challenging. It's expensive, and look, I'd love to. It would be wonderful, but I don't actually think it's primary to my business, because we're an e-commerce channel, and a lot of the magic that we have is actually in the back end and how we make our products and how we deliver them. So I think it depends on what you're doing, and I think if that's the thing that's going to make you really unique, then absolutely. But in my business, I think the technology is a service, and it's a structure that enables us to do what we need to do, but I don't think it's the magic or the secret sauce in our business.
Which, to your point, Michelle, that kind of is the secret sauce to your business, is the technology. And tell us more about how the tech is working with the, with Life Whisperer. You're specifically trying to find fertile, or I don't know how you describe this, high quality embryos. So the whole point of the product is the technology, and you're not necessarily, as your product is only 2 or 3 years old?
Yeah, we're about 3.5 years old.
3.5 years old, okay. So the evolution of tech has been a lot shorter for you. What did you just go in guns blazing, like, I know exactly how I want to support this product, or how did the technology?
Sort of, because I'd come from having had another AI tech company that we also had a global platform and different products in different industries since 2007. So I had that for 8.5 years before we sold, and I thought I knew how to do that. And prior to that, I was in the healthcare sector as a scientist, and so I wanted to kind of merge those two skills. But what I didn't anticipate is how difficult technology is in the healthcare sector, because it's so highly regulated and access to data is very difficult. It's heavily protected. It's different in every country. Regulatory requirements and ISO certifications and standards around data privacy are different in every country. So we kind of unknowingly went out all guns blazing with a massive vision, a global first vision of creating this technology that could be used by anyone, any clinic, anywhere in the world is kind of our tagline. And then we realised how difficult that would be. And so we ended up on this really interesting journey that's been resulted in 5 incredible innovative patents around specific technology that allows us to access globally distributed data sets without ever moving that data. So normally what you would do if you're building an AI product, you need a massive diverse data set to start with. If you don't have clinical and demographic diversity from around the world, then your product just doesn't scale when you go to put it out to market. So it's a really difficult problem. So we're like, well, how are we going to get access to this data if you can't move it across country borders? So we developed technology that allowed us to send our AI out to learn on each of those local data sets instead of moving it, and that encouraged clinics. And then we used a business model of incentivisation for those clinics, getting royalties if they contributed data and expertise. And then all of a sudden we developed this global community and capability for data collection to enable us to even build the AI that we now have. So that's kind of been a really interesting journey. And then the development of that AI itself is kind of, the technology is one part of it, but it's actually a fairly small part of it. It's kind of the nuts and bolts of how you operationally deliver the product. But it's really about how do you get the clinics to believe enough in what you're doing to want to contribute their data and expertise such that you can even build and test this thing. That's the hard bit, and the technology is just kind of an enabler to all of that. So I'm super proud of our journey through kind of technology advancement to allow us to build this really unique system that no one else has, that we can really truly set up clinics anywhere in the world with our Life Whisperer product within about 5 minutes, and they can be up and running, and all of their data is ring-fenced on local cloud servers. There's no data privacy issues. It's really quite amazing what we've built, but it's been almost a process of necessity to do that in order to get the data and service the clients in the way they need to be.
So the previous AI company that you had, and because you've got a medical background, did it already have those relationships with different clinics? So you kind of started from the ground with those relationships.
Yeah.
How did you build the trust through the tech, or did you feel like that was a more personal experience?
We just begged first clinics. We just went to them and said, we think there's something here. This sounds like a really interesting problem to solve, and is this really a problem? And they said yes. Yeah. And then we said, will you please work with us?
I mean, I'm from Texas, and the HIPAA regulations are immensely, and that's the medical guidance around people's clinical background, or any sort of medical background is regulated by this statutory governance, and it's very difficult to get access to it. I don't know, I don't think we have any we might have a startup in the building that is doing something with the government or with policy. Did you have to negotiate with any local government or at federal level in the States yet? Or
you're really on your own.
Yeah.
It's really hard because basically you just have to comply. It's like how you do it is your problem. So we kind of partnered with local clinics here, and we built the proof of concepts. And then once we built those proof of concepts, we kind of presented them at international conferences and trade shows, and did the hard yards of kind of building that network. And then we landed a really big reputable clinical partner out of the US that operates clinics across 8 states. And they've just been advocates of our technology from day one, and they present all of our work. They're KOLs, they're key opinion leaders in the space. And but yeah, in terms of the regulation, it's been much harder than I ever anticipated it would be. Most of our spend is on regulation and legal. It's really challenging because HIPAA regulations in the US, we've got GDPR regulations in Europe, we've got ISO standards that work across Southeast Asia. The TGA, the FDA, like every other regulatory body, China not even bothering yet. It's just every market is completely different. Yeah. And so it's been a really interesting learning journey, and the way that we sort of tackled that is going the hardest. We seem to have a knack for doing this. Going the hardest path first, so meeting the most stringent regulation, which is the FDA, and then everything else has been kind of relatively easy or sort of sub that requirement. Yeah. So that's sort of how we've done that. But no, it's not easy. No,
wouldn't have
it's
been
challenging. Yeah.
So with all of your products and what you're delivering, advancements in technology have obviously helped us across the whole improve our customer journeys. Kelly, I know because in your industry, your market. I just had Michelle talking. I asked Tammy last time.
It's fine.
But I'm just I'm more curious to learn, you're with a lot of your clients, as you were sharing, are corporate clients or, purchasing for corporate gifting. Is that right?
Well, no, it's actually consumer based.
Oh.
But Gemma, who's here in the front row, will love me talking about our corporate sales. Actually, it's really interesting because I had a corporate background before I started, and I thought my audience was going to be corporate. And it actually was really fast growing, like consumer just took over, and that's what I then had to focus on. And corporates come later. So, okay. Yeah, so we had really strong word of mouth, so that's why it became consumer.
So with that, actually, that's better fitting. How are you improving your repeat purchasing through your digitization of the customer journey?
So I think some of the things that we've been doing and focusing on is same-day personalisation. Because we can do same-day delivery in every capital city, we've been actually working on that ability to personalise on a same-day basis, and even for our corporate clients more recently, that's been a real bonus. So it's really a lot of our tech development or anything we do to customise our site to improve customer experience actually usually comes from a customer request first. So for us, the really important thing being, because we've got quite a large customer base, is actually around capturing data and responding to it. So we've been advocates of the Net Promoter Score for more than 5 years, and we benchmark locations so we can spot holes and we address different issues that pop up. But when you have a problem, that's when you can create a solution. So in actual fact, it's when things are difficult, like Michelle's just been talking about, or when there's a problem, that I think the best opportunities arise, and then you can solve them in kind of unique ways. So
can you give us an example?
I think one of the early requests we were having was around regional deliveries, so we weren't able to reach regional customers. This is one of my earlier problems that I had, because we started with a perishable product, so we could only reach as far as our couriers could reach that same day. So then that was addressed by product development, so we added a bigger, like a chocolate range, hamper range, all of those other products that wouldn't allow us to use next day delivery to reach all of Australia, so then our stores could actually dispatch overnight to regional areas. And it's funny because now Star Trek, on all of their vehicles, it says powering e-commerce. Have you seen them driving around? I had to convince them to take my parcels. You're like, come on. So back in the day, they were Australian Air Express, and then they were moved into Star Trek, and now it's Australia Post as well. So, but literally, I had to pitch them and say, I really want you to take my boxes.
Yeah. They need to put your logo on the side of their van. Powered by.
I know. And now they're like, yeah, we love e-commerce. Yeah. So it's really interesting. So, and you know, the funny story with that is that my original account manager that helped me pitch that with Australian Air Express is still my account manager today with Star Trek. So he came back again. So that was kind of cool too. So yeah.
I remember when I first sort of thought that drones were going to, and I'm like, Kelly, you've got to look into drones, really get onto it. And you're like, are they even legal? And I'm like, I don't know, but you should find out. They can solve all your delivery problems.
Imagine this lovely basket being taken by a dodgy drone.
It's not far away.
But this was a while ago, and I'm like, it's around the corner.
I think Amazon's already doing that in the States.
But I feel like that's still like a staged PR stunt.
Yeah.
Amazon's doing it.
I'm sure the advertiser will cover it.
Yeah.
Tammy, what about you? Do you want to share a little bit about your customer journey and how it's changed with the development of different technology you have in-house, but also digital marketing, anything across that?
Really for us, as I said, it was very manual, early on, and really clients could only reach us by ringing us on the phone. And if we had that today, we just wouldn't be in business. So being able to develop a web portal for clients to access their funds, for clients to put in requests and message us, and that was really the first step in a digital space to improving the customer experience or the client experience. And then, of course, developing the app as well, which meant they, at any time could see where they were, see the next 12 months, schedule payments, add details in that they just weren't able to do. And of course, doing that made us much more efficient as well, because clients were doing things themselves as opposed to us having to answer the phone. Really, what we've been working on is what our next generation technology is going to look like. So, you know, today we can't do it in our current technology stack, but today you could walk into your hairdressers and your budget knows you've just walked into your hairdresser because it knows your location and where you're at, and it says that you've got, and it will ping you a message that says, you know, you've got this much in your hairdressing account, and it could be a little joke like, you can get the treatment today. You know how the hairdressers always say, do you want a treatment? Right. Well, that's for the girls in the room. Because you didn't use all your budget last time. And so we can just be a lot smarter with the way in which we're doing things. We can really look at reinventing the way that credit assessment is done, because if you think about, we have so much data, we know where people are spending their money. There's a bunch of different things that we can do to disrupt a lot of different industries because we know where people are spending their money and we know how they can save money. We know how many kilowatts of power people are buying. So we can buy the electricity wholesale. There's so many opportunities, and what we really need is that technology stack and that accurate data to help us do those things, because our old technology, well, our legacy and our current technology stack allows users to be able to free type, which means that the quality of the data isn't as good as what it should be, and it's just not reliable. But moving forward, we'll have all of this stuff in. I mean, when I first built it, it was like, I just need a way to not have to go to Australia Post and line up, you know, like that's what I was looking for, some automation. I wasn't really thinking about 20 years. I was actually just thinking about, you know, how am I going to pay rent next month? And then all the startups in the room would know that feeling, because I bootstrapped, I didn't get investment. So it was like, how I just need to have enough to pay my bills on time. Even part of the part. And get through. And so I didn't have that foresight to think about what is it going to look like. And quite frankly, it almost seemed like science fiction if I was talking and thinking that way 20 years ago, even 15 years ago. And some of the stuff we can do today is just going to be incredible, and it will completely transform our business. We can, I could talk for a long time about it, but even just the process of doing a loan application is so tedious. You know, getting statement, we have all of that already. We can pre-approve clients before any other lender even knows that client is looking for a loan, because we already know that Michelle wants to buy a house because you put that in your budget.
I do actually, but it's not enough.
See, we already know. The technology moving forward is going to allow us to do. We would be pigeonholed very quickly if we left it the way it is today.
Yeah, which is very forward thinking, and I hope most of us as founders and businesswomen and businessmen are thinking that way, especially if you're going global, which you are. So, you know, that is really imperative. With, you know, predicting, because you have so much data, are you nervous at all about telling your customers what you know they know, but you're telling them what they know?
No, because...
Do they trust?
The trust that we have with our clients, I feel like it's second to none. I mean, we know more about our clients and perhaps their parents or their partners if their partners are not on the budget. Like, we know so much about our clients, and the thing is, our clients are always first and foremost. So, and that comes through in every single thing that we do. You hear it, you feel it, you smell it in our office. Our core values come through in everything we do. They're not written on any wall or any mug, but you know, if you pick up a call or you listen to one of our calls, you'll hear all our values coming through, that we really care about our clients and making sure they're on the right trajectory to achieving their financial goals, and just making sure that they're not stressed about their finances. So I think, in a way, I can see why you would ask that question, but also I think if it's being delivered from one of our caring staff members, they've built a relationship with MyBudget, because obviously they don't get the same person every single time they call. If you build that relationship and the benefit they get from us being able to exceed their expectations, I think builds the trust in that way.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a bit of bias in that industry as well, just because, you know, I go to my accountant knowing I'm going to be completely vulnerable with that person, and I'm going to share my expenses because I want the best return I can get. Yeah. So I'm going to share that stuff. So maybe their framework going into that is already I'm happy for them to tell me what I need to know or what I already know. But maybe Kelly, like with your customers, could you be that forward thinking with them and tell them, you know, I noticed that 2 weeks ago you shared interest in this product, and I also noticed that your behavior on social media, because I'm tracking everything, is pretty negative, so someone must have died or something, you know, like, can you suggest, like,
do you need a funeral?
Do you need a funeral bouquet? Like, can you do that? Do you feel that confidence, or do you, I don't know, like.
You know, it's really interesting with consumers is there's a certain level of stalking that I think everyone's okay with now. But I feel really uncomfortable when it goes too far. You've probably all had those moments when you've been on social media and you just feel like somebody knows too much about you. So I think there's actually a fine line as a marketer to your customers that you've got to get the balance right of getting the right information to them at the right time, but in a really sensitive way. And I think that's something that we're doing quite a lot of work on at the moment in our business, in looking at how we can do that better and being more thoughtful. I think that's probably the approach we're trying to take, is being thoughtful of our customers versus pushing things at them in too aggressive a way, because I think it's too easy to unsubscribe, it's too easy to unlike something, and so we just try and get that balance right, is I guess what we're trying to do as a business. And because we deliver happy, we don't tend to do the funeral stuff. But I think that the other challenge I think that everybody has around technology is just the overload of data. There's just so much information that we all have, and so it's a matter of actually just trying to really remind yourself to focus on the right data for your business, because you can get so buried because of the overwhelm. There's just so much information there, and anyone that's got a technologically based business is just going to have that overwhelm. So that's I think as much a challenge as anything.
Do you feel like you're questioning when you're overstepping? Because I know, like, you know, because I work for the Distillery, which is an advertising agency, and so we do a lot of website and app development, and we'll consult on that. And a common issue that we face with clients is, are we overstepping with pulling this data? And it comes down to the client really directing that, because it's their customer, and gauging the sentiment of your customer base, which sometimes, you know, can be reflected through the data that we're pulling, because you can have an understanding of their general sentiment. Do you feel like, when you are gauging whether or not to roll out maybe a specific campaign or a specific message, what do you ask yourself?
I think the thing is, if I feel uncomfortable about it for my own personal delivery, then I would probably not do it in our business. But the other thing is, if you think something is exciting, but you're not sure how your customer's going to react to it, the best thing is to test small. So, and I think that's the great thing about data, is that you can actually just do a small test sample, see what the reaction is. You never have to roll it out to your entire customer base. And we often do that when we're doing more general campaigns, is we'll do a geographic test and see how it works in South Australia, because we can then see our analytics data and see how it impacts. I know Tammy does the same. But that's the wonderful thing we all have the privilege of with data, is actually being able to do those test sets before you roll anything out and make a massive mistake. Yep. So you can limit how much of a mistake you can make.
Yeah, the exposure of that. Yeah, definitely. I'm trying to remember what the original topic was. What was it?
Technology and how technology and customer service intersect.
What about you? Because I would imagine, Michelle, and you have to correct me if I'm wrong, you don't have a lot of repeat customers, because they maybe get a good and
particularly role.
Yeah, so you'd hope that, you know, they potentially
Depends what you call a customer, because
That's true.
the IVF clinics would be a customer.
Well, okay, so from a B2C perspective versus the client, you know, the business, the clinician recommending it.
Yeah, we've actually got a really interesting marketing challenge, because our key stakeholder or beneficiary of our product is actually the patient, but we don't sell to the patient. We have to sell through the clinic, because it's a regulated industry. And so, and in the clinic, there's also different stakeholders. There's the, the clinic directors who care about making money as the clinic, and they're often run by, it's a very aggregated industry, so they're often run by PE funds. And so they care about the money side, right, which is a very insensitive marketing message to put out to try and get clinics on board. And then you've got the scientists who are in the labs that are actually using our technology for their patients, who are worried about, well, is this AI just going to take over my job, and am I now essentially useless in this, situation of embryo assessment, because they're the ones who currently do it. And then you've got the patients who are just absolutely happy to pay whatever and use whatever technology is available in order to help them bring home a baby quicker. Because it's a very traumatic response for them. So it's actually a really challenging marketing exercise, and we've just gone through this big campaign, and I was having a little chuckle when you talked about the funeral example because it's not at all related to that, but we just got our campaign content back. We're doing a micro-targeting campaign in Toronto and Manchester for the exact same reasons that you were talking about, to test small geographical area that's not too kind of intrusive to our big markets. And it was terrible. It was terrible. The content was just wrong for the customer. And I think it's really hard to please all of those different stakeholders with the one message. And so we've just spent days and days and days trying to nuance this messaging. And I think it's just, for me, and I think it's because I've come from a scientific background, and I've also been kind of in that situation of being a patient with fertility issues, and I know how hard that is. And the last thing that I would want to come across is a company selling the message around, you can make more money off your patients coming in for, their first, high value cycle through IVF. It's just kind of completely the wrong message. So anyway, long story short, I think it's about being really sensitive about the messaging and the targeting and how you kind of, meet the demands or the needs of those different stakeholders, and you've got to do it in a really genuine, careful way.
And with that, because it's, technology can come off really cold, it can be something that is inhumane. How do we as founders and companies in a tech world add back the humanity in the technology that makes your products what they are, that accelerates everything for your product?
You just have to stay true to the cause, I think. Like, you have to remember why you're doing it, and you have to stay true to that one value proposition that you're trying to achieve. You were saying your customers are at the heart of everything that you do. Kelly, you were saying that, you deliver happiness. It's all about the experience of the end customer, and I think if you stay true to that and then subliminally put all the other kind of benefits to those other stakeholders sub that message, I think that's a far better way of sort of targeting. So that's what we've done, but it is hard because you need to sell the value to the customer that you need to take your technology in order to get it to those patients that desperately want it, and that's a really challenging.
Tammy, do you think that you'd ever take the account manager, the account service out of? Because if you were to build this really robust custom platform that your clients can go in and see where their money is being spent, how things are moving, where they need to, be a little bit more reserved, would you ever consider taking out the human?
The answer to that is whatever the market wants, whatever our client wants, because I can't see that happening anytime soon, because all the value we provide, we often say that the technology is like the oxygen we breathe. We need it to survive. It's there. But that's not what our clients are seeing. Obviously they're seeing our app and our website, but it's all about the way in which our staff understand what the client wants out of their life, and is making sure that they're staying on track to that. And yes, the technology plays a big part in actually making that happen, but the technology doesn't have the conversation that says, you're looking for investment property, and leave it at that. It's like, well, why do you want an investment property? Oh, well, because I don't have much super and I want to have more super. And, well, why do you want to have more super? Because I want my children to have a secure future, which I never had when I was growing up. And that was a real conversation that I had with a client, and she just burst out crying. Now, I could have just gone with, you want a investment property, and left it at that. And just that trust and that relationship that got built, that I'm actually going to deliver to her through MyBudget is that security for your future, your kids' future, not an investment property. And so until technology can work that stuff out, I think we're a long way off. But again, it's all going to be driven by whatever our client wants. If our client doesn't want to speak to us, well, they don't want to speak to us. They want to have the relationship with MyBudget through our technology. That's where we will go, and it'll all be user-driven and user-led. It's not going to be driven by us, just like everything in the business is not driven by us. I can never be so egotistical to assume that, you know, I can have a good idea what I think our client wants, but I'll be told by our clients what they want. And we can present new ideas to them and new ways of doing them, and it's going to be up to the user and the client whether they use that or not, they see benefit or not in that. And so that's sort of my answer to that. I don't know. We don't know, right? Like, I didn't know 20 years ago what would be possible today. And I just think technology is moving so quickly. It's a hard question to answer, but I agree with Michelle, like, our people, they're the heart and soul of our business. They deliver, you know, on our promise to our clients, and our technology enables that. And it's hugely important. If I can get the technology to do more of all the bullshit that our staff have to do, hallelujah, I'll do it, you know, and then my people can spend more time doing stuff that adds real value to people's lives.
Yeah, definitely.
So can I add something to that? I think, which is probably an observation I've had, particularly through the COVID period, is that I think more than ever, technology is the enabler, but consumers want to connect with real people at the end of the day. And I think when you look at...
especially during COVID, like...
it's lonely. Like, you know, in Melbourne, especially when we're seeing it's really tough over there. But I think more than ever, the more technology there is, I think the more consumers want to connect with real people that are part of brands. And I think that's something that I know both Michelle and Tammy do really well with their marketing as well, because I know you're the face of your brand, Michelle, and so is Tammy, with MyBudget, because people want to actually feel like they can connect with someone that's like them and that has been through a similar situation that they're going through as well. And I think if people feel that connection with a brand, the transaction's more trusted. So I think it gets people over the line to connect with anyone.
And are you reevaluating your brand, or you're just working around brand right now?
Yeah, we've done quite a big brand evaluation recently, but we've always, actually, I was the face of our brand by necessity at the beginning because I couldn't afford not to be. So when I started, and we've been bootstrapped as well the whole time, I couldn't afford expensive agencies or expensive ad campaigns, and so the best way for me to reach customers was actually to spruik myself in the media and say, hi, I'm a young woman that's got a business, and you know, and this is what I'm doing, and this is how we're working with our customers. And so we actually batted above our weight for a long time as a brand through that sort of traditional PR strategy, but now you see that changing with new brands, and the social media way that you interact is very similar, but it's just in a more of a technology-enabled way. But I think, I think that's given small businesses the ability to compete with bigger businesses, because people are more interested in that real person story versus the big corporate. And there's so many websites when you go on, I always go on the About Us, and I want to know who the people are behind a brand if I'm buying something. So I think the brands I'm more likely to transact with, I want to know who it is.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I see that glasses are empty now. I think we're going to open it up to Q&A. Really informal. If you have any questions whatsoever, this is your time and opportunity to ask these three very successful business women in the room. It's not quite often that we get such a powerhouse, so feel free to ask if anyone has any questions.
Hi, ladies.
Hi.
So, Michelle, having that success overseas, and I know, Kelly, you've got your business established overseas as well. I'm not too sure, Tammy, whether you've branched out overseas.
Not yet.
Not yet. But did that give you extra kudos and credibility here in Australia? Because sometimes we, and particularly being in South Australia too, we feel like we're the ugly cousin a little bit, which really irritates me. So I'm just interested in having that success overseas. Did that make any changes for you here?
I can answer that one with conviction. So my first company, in 2007, we founded that one. We fought so hard in our local territory to get clients on board here and could get no one. And we started thinking, is this just crap? Like, have we just are we barking up the wrong tree? Have we created the wrong type of product that the industry doesn't need? And it was really frustrating. And then we went on a trip to California because for some conference that we were presenting at. And on that trip, we landed the biggest public sector organisation in the US as a client for that product. And it totally changed my opinion of everything. And then when we came back, everyone wanted to work with us. And I was like, hang on a sec. So it's a real thing. And I think, I don't think it's intentional. I think it's due to the size of our market and kind of that knowledge about different products and that kind of the trust in those products that are built locally, right or wrongly. But yeah, when we started Presagen this time, we had a very intentional global first focus, and we say it often. We care about Australia and we care desperately about South Australia. We're massive advocates for industry development here, but unfortunately, you need to be globally relevant because it is quite, in our space, sorry, that's not for all businesses, but in our space, if you build an AI product for Australia, you will fail because it's just a small market. It needs to be scaled. So, there's conservatism around technology uptake. There's conservatism around cost of products. There's, there's difficulties with staffing, I think, because the culture is not a startup culture yet. It's not an innovation culture yet, so people still tend towards those more secure jobs. When you go to Silicon Valley, it's the coolest thing to work in a startup. You're not a cool person if you go for a government job as a software engineer. Like, that's a fail of epic scale. So, it's just very different. And you see kind of people at networking events there. I went to a networking event in January in the US, and it's, this grad student who was just interning for a company was selling me on this company with such conviction, like, there's this amazing company I'm working for and this is what they do and it's incredible, and would you like me to connect you to you would never get that here, right? It's just a complete cultural difference, and I think it's changing, but it's definitely there.
Can I just add to that? I really think that there needs to be some shifts from our government with our IR laws. I think that they're very restrictive, and so to put people on in Australia, you've got to performance manage them, and they can ring in sick, and they have to be off, I don't know how many days, 90 days before you can say that, there's no job for you now, and you don't have to hear from them. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are wrong that will deter people from starting businesses because it's too risky, because you could have, and if someone's underperforming, the difficulty in getting them out is hard. You go to England, you go to the UK, and you go to the US, and it's like, so people work a lot harder, and they're grinding,
and there's not penalty
all the
rates.
time, and there's no penalty rates, and
yeah, that's why I moved to Australia, to get away from all that.
See, don't do that. You need to bring the hard-working people here.
Well, I just think I
just want the
tough
4-week vacation.
Well, it wasn't like that when I started 20 years ago. Like, it wasn't that tough. There was good, fair laws in place. Obviously completely supportive of discrimination, and absolutely you should not be firing someone because they're, overweight, or they're black, or they're white, or they're male, or they're female, right? 100%. But if they're not performing, a business is not going to let someone go who's doing really well.
Yeah.
So, and it's just so difficult, and I think until there's some flex on that, which through JobKeeper for those businesses that qualified, there was some flex. Until there's some flex on that and some trust that goes into founders and CEOs and businesses, it's going to make this startup culture more challenging in Australia. And I don't want to put people off, but it's just the reality of the framework that everyone in this room has to operate within, and it's challenging.
Yeah. You had a different global experience. Do you want to talk about that?
I think that your question, and I think Michelle answered it really correctly, is that it depends on the category you're in. So for us being e-commerce, being national was a big thing for us early on. And we've only expanded recently to the UK markets. That's relatively new for us, and I don't think that added any kudos really to Australia, because Australians actually want everything made in Australia. And also we find in the UK we have to say it's made in the UK because we employ people to make it there, so it is actually made there. People just want, when they're buying consumer products, they want local products. So it's interesting. So the messages are very different.
Yeah.
Kelly, how did you first come up with the idea, and then how did you test it out to get the proof of concept?
Great question. So I love food and I like flowers. So the idea really started in that way, and literally the business was very simple. When I started, I had 9 fresh fruit bouquets. They were photographed terribly in my apartment with no professional lighting, put up on a website, and people bought them, which was amazing. But the way I tested the concept before I went to market, and it was really about what price people wanted to pay. That was the hardest thing. I followed my instincts. I loved the product. I had to work out what was an acceptable price for people to pay, and we benchmarked it against fresh flowers anyhow. But I literally made them for dinner parties and turned up and said, I'll bring dessert. And I said, what do you think of this? Awesome. And that's how so it was very informal focus groups, but you just want to make sure you've got honest friends. And also try and think about who your buyer is and making sure that the people you're presenting it to are of your right buyer group. So so look, there's a lot of luck involved in those early days too, but we also had really strong word of mouth in our first 12 months. And as I said, and I did dress up like a strawberry down Oxford Street in Sydney. I did anything that needed to sell out of balloons. So lots of fun.
Nice.
Fun stories.
I want to hear more about the strawberry.
I'll tell you over a wine.
I love some unconventional PR. It's a long way. Do we have any other questions need to ask?
I think everyone wants a drink.
Before we close up, I was just going to first say thank you to these beautiful women for showing up and sharing your successes with us. Can we give them a round of applause? Yeah.